this one's going to go pretty quick. It should be a short video. Since I already have the alternator out of the car, we have a new one. Things to look for. First thing you must do is disconnect the battery. You have to disconnect that battery over there or you're going to get lit up. It doesn't feel too good. Anyway, if you have to replace your alternator and you get it bench tested and you have to return your core in, make sure you take everything off of the alternator that usually a new one or a remanufactured one wouldn't come with. For instance, this one here comes with this bracket here. This just holds the wire loom that connects to the alternator here. And that goes here, so this I have to replace because you don't get a new one. The other thing is this top nut for the main power supply on here from the battery. Keep this nut too. So, you want to strip it down of anything that it might not come with. So, keep that in mind because you'll come back here after, getting a new one from the parts store and then you're missing a bracket or you're missing this nut and you're like, oh, darn it. And you have to, hopefully you can go back and say, hey, fish it back. But just to avoid it, just make sure to, to do this. So I'm going to put this bracket on real quick. Tools you need for this job. I'm going to replace the belt for this as well. I'm just going to use a standard wrench for this one. And we have a size 10, 12, and a 14. Let's get started. We'll take off this one first. It's okay to do this so you're not going to harm the alternator. And for right now, I'm just going to take this nut and move it to a safe place so we don't lose it once we drop it down here. Okay, so now it's a matter of getting set up down here below, and then I'll show you what we got to remove. Access is key in our situation, so once I change the camera angle here, you'll figure out how much room you got to play with here. Okay, I think we've got a pretty good angle here to attack this. Get some lighting in here, hopefully it doesn't reflect. Alright, so here's the area that it's going to sit in. So what we got to do first is, what I did is there's a fuse box right here that bounced here. I went ahead and unbolted this, and so this kind of gives me a little bit more room right here in this area here, because we have an adjuster screw for the belt here. So, and that connects to the alternator, so that's how it adjusts the tension on the belt. Okay, so and then here's your wire loom for the alternator here. Usually this will be clipped in here, and I kind of clipped it out just to give me enough wiggle room, just enough room for my hands to be in. The first thing you're gonna do is well, it's gonna be reverse order when you take it off. So we're doing the install. So you're just gonna have to follow along and then just do reverse of what I'm doing basically. So we got this long back bolt here. This is a 14 millimeter. So we're gonna have to remove this of its bracket here. I'll move this aside. And then we have one more bolt that's in the alternator. I kept it here for safekeeping. This goes into our adjuster. So I'll move this to the side as well. Okay. So now it's just a matter of dropping this guy in here without destroying any wires or anything that's around it. what you want to do is put this back side in first. This side here, that's what you want to do, because that's going to control, you know, this portion of the alternator once that bolts in. Okay, so I'll put the bolt in. Everything's going to be loose at this point. Once we have everything, we're happy with it, everything's connected, then we'll start torquing stuff down. But that's not till way later, until we get the full adjustment of the belt and make sure that it's tight enough. And if you think you have it, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab the bolt and see if it's matching up, if all the holes are actually matching up or not. So what I'm going to do is, it looks like we're kind of close, so it should be. So I'm going to grab my ratchet and kind of guide this thing in. Now, as in for alternators, it's, you know, these cars have always had a history of having alternator and charging issues. Denso is the best alternator period to go with. In my opinion, the second best is the brand new Napa series of alternators they have. And then you can probably go with O'Reilly's or AutoZone. Now, it's cheaper to go with a reman with a warranty, of course. Warranty is key. If you don't want to mess around with it, you know, always go new. Typically what goes wrong with these alternators is the internal regulator, right? So that's the, for anything that's remanufactured, that's kind of like the low end or the problem of the alternators. It's the only thing that really actually goes out. So even if you wanted to rebuild your alternator, basically you're just going to replace the brushes and the regulator on the backside, and you'd probably be good to go. Alright, so we got this one started. Alright, so now what we want to do is we want to stab the other side of the alternator where the adjuster screws at. Let's see if I can get a light in here. So it's this little block here, and so we're going to take that one bolt that I had, this one here, and we're going to put it into that little block. There's a hole for it, and then this threads onto the alternator. Okay. Okay, so I got it. So I'm just gonna tie it on by hand. Should go in fairly smooth. I'm not gonna tie it down at this point. I just want to get it all the way close where I'm still able to kind of move it. There So now I'm gonna snug this one, this back one a little bit up, a little bit closer. I'm not gonna tie in this one either. Not until we get that belt on. Alright, so that's good enough. So I'm gonna grab a new belt. Got one here. So this one goes down to the pulley first. Is the first one that I'm gonna connect to, and then it comes around to the AC, the air conditioner compressor, and then to the alternator. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull up the alternator for a second. Is with the same adjuster bolt down here. Is I'm going to go ahead and tighten this thing up. I'm going to pull it up by hand, make it a little bit easier, and then I'm going to hand thread it first. Alright, now I'm going to tighten it up with a wrench. So I need an extension on this one. What I'm doing is I'm checking the tension of the belt as I go along here. This is, I'm getting very close. There's not that much play. You don't want it extremely tight. You just end up ripping that belt up. But you want it to have flex in it. And I think we're good here. So I'm happy with that. Next thing is to go ahead and tie in the back bolt and that front bolt. So I'm going to do this front one first. Alright, so we're good there, and then we'll tighten up the back one. Alright, she's not going anywhere. So I'm going to switch over to the 10 millimeter, and we're going to start connecting the wires onto the alternator. So I'm going to start with the this bottom one here, the plug. Make sure that inspect your all your plugs, make sure there's no debris in them, and plug it in. Alright, so that connector's on, we're good. Next is your main power wire here. Make sure you still have your cap If not, it'll be okay, but it's a safety thing to put on, because if you strike anything ground to it, then it's going to spark pretty good. So you get this in here. This one has grooves where this thing sits. What I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can find a comfortable spot for it. I think right there should work fine. I like the way this curls up. Okay, so we get our nut on. And this one is a 10. And tighten that down good. Make sure all your contacts are clean on here as well. You can put some dielectric grease on it too. Alright, so I'm happy with that. Then get my cover, slip it over here, snap it in place. And then here's that little bracket that we had here. Let me see if I can move this AC tube out of the way for y'all. So this goes back on here. So now it's just a matter of getting all everything you might have moved back into place. It goes there. And of course, I had moved this out of the way. In my opinion, it's one of the easiest alternator installs ever. They made it really simple. And that's pretty much it. If you're going to take it any further, there's our YouTube videos that, shows you how to test out your alternator off your battery. When you first start up this alternator, it's going to read at high idle around 14.2 volts or somewhere in that neighborhood, being in the 4 and then the teens. Then that's without a load. So no headlights on, no AC on, no radio on, no load on it. Once the idle cell is down, it's going to stay in the range of like 13.5, between 13.5 and about 13.85 volts. Okay, so this car is pretty cool. There is a battery light that goes on the dash when you're not getting a charge off your alternator, which is pretty cool. Kind of tells you right away that something's wrong. Any suggestions for charging? I've been through it with other Lexuses. My best bet was always get a good alternator. Always get like a high cranking amps battery, a very good battery. I like to actually replace them together. New alternator, new battery at the same time. You don't have to. It's just my habit. So that's pretty much it. Fairly simple. It's straightforward. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments. And thanks for watching again. Please subscribe if you guys can. I'll appreciate it. Thanks for watching.